The story is told that Henry Kissinger, in meeting Zhou Enlai, asked Zhou Enlai, who he knew was a student of history, a question. What's the long-term impact of the French Revolution? Zhou Enlai supposedly answered, "It's too soon to tell." We are now in this crisis of COVID-19, the coronavirus. We have been sheltering at home. All the activities that are normal in our lives have been stopped. We've had to look at new ways of relating to each other and creating new rituals and understandings. And we might ask ourselves, given this crisis, what will be its long-term effects even when it's over? I think the answer is it's too soon to tell. But in thinking about what this time in history might mean, it might be useful to look back and see how the Jewish people have responded to other crises in the past. This is hardly the first time when the world has been disrupted and chaotic and changed. There have been times when anyone rational would have thought that Judaism should have come to an end. The first experience in 586 BCE was when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and took the people into exile. They no longer had their temple where God was worshipped and where they thought God in fact resided. They were now in a strange place, a place far away, and they had to change. Theologically, they began to understand that God was universal, that God could be encountered anywhere because God was everywhere. They knew that they had a story that they had to tell. And so at some point around that time, the Torah began to be written down so that a narrative could be shared across generations and across time and space. In the year 70, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and the temple once again. A religion that was based on priesthood, sacrifice, one place, the temple, was now destroyed. Judaism might have died, but the rabbis came up with an incredibly creative response. Simplistically, the temple was replaced by synagogues. The altar and sacrifice were replaced by prayer, and rabbis replaced the priests. In a deeper way, our homes became the small temple. Our dining room tables became the altar. Study and learning took the place of a priesthood. One of the best examples is the Passover Seder, the Haggadah, that we just celebrated together. The Seder certainly tells the story of Egyptian slavery, but at a deeper level, it reminds us of Jerusalem and the temple. We have on our Seder plates the lamb bone of sacrifice, the wine, the matzah. We tell stories not so much of Moses, but of the rabbis, of Akiba and Tarfon and Eleazar and Eliezer. You're able to use a story to keep memory alive. And the Seder, the order of that story, replaces the strict rules of temple sacrifice. And that was not the only time or only experience when Judaism had to respond to great threats through the ages. In 1492, the Jews were exiled from Spain. Some went to Amsterdam, and from there to the New World. Some went south to North Africa. A small group went east, settled in a little town in the hills of Galilee called Tzfat. There, following their rabbi, Isaac Luria, known as the Ari, the lion, They changed the way in which the Jewish world would worship. They welcomed Shabbat in a new and revolutionary way. They saw Shabbat as a time when a breach that existed between God and God's people could be healed through love poetry, through a honeymoon, through a wedding ceremony. They would sing songs to the Sabbath bride, Lecha Dodi. They would sing love songs, Dodi Li or Yedit Nefesh. They would create this new Kabbalat Shabbat ceremony that became universally accepted in the Jewish world very quickly. And then there were other times and other crises. Some of those changes were positive, like the New World, or the Enlightenment and Emancipation of the 19th century and late 18th century. Judaism had to confront modernity. That too was seen by some as a threat, and they remained stuck in that one world that they lived in the 17th and early 18th century. But there were others who responded to this new event of openness, of modernity, and reformed Judaism, recreated Judaism, adapted it, and made it consistent with science and knowledge, with the outside world, no longer insular. That was the beginning of classical Reform Judaism. In the 19th century, there was the confrontation with nationalism. In the 20th century, the threat and the tragedy of the Holocaust. But in all of those times, Judaism responded in creative, dynamic, exciting ways. And so now we are in the midst of a different kind of crisis, a worldwide crisis of health, a crisis that is making us reevaluate what our values are, what matters, how we respond. That's true in our general lives, but it's true in Judaism as well. We know that things will change. We don't know how exactly, but we do know that things cannot remain the same. It's true that some of our legacy institutions may fail. Some synagogues may fail. A donor base is changing. Will people relate to their institutions of brick and mortar through membership dues and other kinds of support? Or will there be new ways of relating? We've already seen that happen in these last few weeks. Our synagogue, as well as so many other synagogues, as well as churches and mosques, have responded creatively using the internet through Zoom and live streaming and Facebook and all different other kinds of ways to keep connected with our members and our community. Remarkably, there are so many people who log on to our programs, often far many more than are part of our regular congregation. So many people celebrated Passover together this year through Zoom Passovers or various other ways that perhaps would not have ever had the chance to bring family and friends together across oceans and time zones and all celebrating together and using Haggadahs that they put together through open source resources on the internet. Most remarkably, if you've had a chance to see Saturday Night Seder, which appeared this past Saturday, over 1 million people watched a YouTube Seder put together in less than 2 weeks by some of the most creative minds of film and TV and theater and music. We laughed, we cried, we learned. That Seder appealed to people, Jews and non-Jews, those who were in the Seder itself and producing it. Some of them were Jews, some of them were Jewishly engaged, some just played Jews on TV and in movies. But it was engaging, and it was available to people. Sometime in the future, someone will study the impact of that one YouTube show. We don't know what its real impact is or what it represents completely, other than it was a joyous occasion of being able to celebrate a Passover Seder throughout America and beyond. So we don't know what this time will mean. We don't know what the future might bring. But we do know that, at least in the Jewish world, we've always been able to respond to crises with creativity, the ability to adapt, the ability to reform. And it is up to us to continue that commitment and make sure that there is a bright future, and realize that being able to respond to whatever events occur outside is a definition of what it means to be connected to something that has lasted for over 3,000 years, because it continues to grow, adapt, and create. We continue on together.